please. If you would make sure that your cell phone is silenced, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Hopefully all of you in the audience have signed in our sign-in sheet over by the door that you came in through. If you have not, please do. Thank you for participating and being here. Lisa, would you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Jerry Valentine, Darcy Cadwin,
Here.
Angela Brown, Jenny Slopes,
Here.
Jasper Christopher,
Here.
Tara Shields,
Here.
Keith Gosher.
Here.
And can you verify, or I'm sorry, I'm going to read the adopted policy of the board of zoning. The adopted policy of the Berlin Township Zoning Commission is that each applicant or agenda item will be given 10 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson to make a formal presentation. The chair will allow questions from the commission members in order to provide a timely and orderly discussion of the business for consideration. Finally, the audience will then be given up to 3 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson for each speaker to respond. The chairperson may limit repetitive debate, and all comments from the audience must be addressed to the chairperson. Lisa, can you verify that we can't advertise this in?
It was actually tabled from, is it February 14th, I think?
No.
Oh, you did table? Oh, you
It's
did
behind
advertise?
you.
Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, it was advertised on March 4th, 2023 in the Delaware Gazette.
Thank you. We have two of the board members sitting in the audience. One of them was unable to be at the last meeting, so they're participating but not sitting here. And then we have an adjacent landowner who also has to stay, not behind the table. So I will turn it over to you guys for your presentation.
Okay. Good evening, RJ Sabatino, TNR Properties. Thanks for having us back. I'm here with Randall Wooding with Jonas. He's our land planner and architect, and Mark Mann with Advanced Civil Design. He's our civil engineer. So we're here again this evening with the Berlin mixed-use project that we're proposing to you. And this is mixed use in that we have an industrial component and a multifamily component. The industrial component has sort of gone through the process as it relates to the planning commission, and we decided to, for the apartment portion, table our votes at the planning commission level because we received a lot of feedback from you. I'm excited and happy that we've made some substantial changes that we believe addresses all of your comments. And I'd love to go through that with you right now, if you could. I think the best way to go about doing that is to go through the letter that I sent as part of our resubmission. It should be part of your packets. And since your email, you have that value. So the letter goes through the major changes. We do have some additional minor ones, and I'll go through them all. To begin, I'll reorient us. So we have the overall site plan here, 3637. Lackey Old Estates. We have our 6 or so neighbors here, and then the current existing stub of Reed Parkway. And the proposed project extends Reed Parkway to open up not only for our development, but also the remaining hundreds of acres of business park that will bring good growth, tax revenue to the township for the benefit of the township. So into the changes as it relates to the multifamily. You'll see that this site plan looks a lot different. The north portion previously had a road and an entire of the road multifamily apartments. We've eliminated that entirely, as long as, in addition to the road, that comes a substantial amount of buildings. We've eliminated 72 apartment units. So that's extremely substantial, getting into maybe an even more rural density as requested by the Planning Commission. Coming with that, now we're at 5.9 or so units to the acre. Open space as relates to this density. We're not at the code of 20% open space. We're not double that. We're not triple that. We are we're over rather 70% open space on this project, which is substantial. I just wanted to note that for you. Going along with kind of the site plan changes and building eliminations, unit eliminations, we also received feedback as it relates to the building elevations. We have renderings here that we've changed for you, darkening some of those colors, right, as requested. And additionally, we've committed to cementitious siding, where there is siding, cementitious material, much nicer material than vinyl, as well as darkening some of the natural materials, the brick and so forth. So we think this is a much better looking building that kind of fits what was requested of us from that February 14th hearing. Going down next to our second bullet points of the setbacks. As a result of us lowering our density substantially, we've been able to eliminate all of our setback divergences that we previously were requesting. So, as a recap, the original proposal was to maintain the 250-foot buffer that was in the Berlin Industrial Overlay. We don't have 250 feet anymore. We have at least 350 feet from our existing neighbor's property line on Lackhill State Road. Sometimes more. So that's a substantial setback change, 100 additional feet, 350 feet from our neighbors. You'll see here as well that we've, at the request of the Planning Commission, kind of curved the landscape buffer as well to hook around to the north. Again, we're not proposing anything up here, but hooking that landscape mound was requested. And that goes as part of the 350-foot buffer. And with that mound, the code is 6 foot. We committed to 8 feet high mound on that 350-foot buffer. The next major item on the list, going down, is parking. And we understand that the PRD, and we believe that the commission understands that the PRD has sort of a, frankly, outdated parking requirements as it relates to multifamily. 3 parking spaces to a unit is not doable. That would give us 900 some spaces. However, we listened to your concern as it relates to guest parking and added a substantial amount of guest parking. So previously, we were at 532 total spaces. We've added 92 spaces for guest parking to give us a total of 624 parking spaces provided, which is, by and large, substantial and much above what we would call the industry standard for multifamily parking. Finally, as it relates to 1-bedroom sizes, we maintain the stance that the code of 800 feet minimum for a 1-bedroom is too small. What I mean by that is we continue to ask for the variance as it relates to our 1-bedroom size. We are at 751 feet for our smallest 1-bedroom apartment. To put that in, again to perspective, a mile up the street at Seattle House, 681 square feet, or more than 70 square feet larger than that. A mile the other way, Four Winds Apartments, 681 square feet. I think that kind of paints the picture as it relates to the market for 1-bedroom sizes. Other changes as it relates to the site plan. There was a concern regarding mail pickup. We added some mail kiosks here on the north side. Additionally, this was where the trash receptacle previously was, sort of I mean, frankly, in the middle of the site, but east of what was being really effectively developed. We have since, at the request of the Planning Commission, moved the trash receptacle to further away from the existing 6 or so neighbors that we have. So in culmination, this is a project that is extremely rural density. We've heard your requests. We believe we've met your requests. These are really beautiful buildings, as you can see, changed at your request for cementitious siding, for a little darker material, darker color. I mean, they really are good looking buildings, quality buildings, and this development will provide housing in addition to commercial industrial developments as another portion of our project. Substantial tax revenue for the Berlin Township, for the Berlin Township TIF, to be used to the benefit of the township as it so decides. And it will also serve to open up the hundreds of other acres of development land in the Berlin Industrial Overlay for other good developments. We're proud of this project. We're happy with the changes we've made. We hear the requests that you made and we listen to you. And we respectfully ask for your affirmative vote here this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Would you like to start?
Can you provide, I guess, a little bit more detail on the changes as far as like the colors are concerned? Because it seems very similar to what you had before, I guess.
Miranda, you want to maybe touch on that? The previous colors were more red tones, reddish tones. This is kind of a more earthy, darker color.
We had some very high chromo brick. We had siding that was a little bit different, so we toned down all of the brick to a more earth tone. We toned down the shake details up here in the gables to a lesser shade, and we slightly lightened all of the siding that's on the building. You still want to get enough ins and outs. These units have a lot of ins and outs and kicks, so they have a nice scale to them. And so we added the trim. We had a couple more details in the gables. In general, that's pretty much what we've done to it.
Sir, can I get your name and address, please?
My name is Randall Woodings, Connor Johnson Associates, Architects Planners, 400 South Fifth Street, Columbus, Ohio. A couple other things that we did on this portion right here that I'd like to go over. In the chapter or portion 15 overlay, there's and we're not in that, there's some information that they were having no two-story issues at 250 and none to 350. We made sure that there's only this one-story building within that 350 foot area, and absolutely none here. We're way over 350 feet for any of these two-story buildings right now. So we've increased this by a good bit. We've increased this area right here in terms of blocking. And we increased this down a little bit here. We reduced the density right here because we had some big buildings that were down here. And we put these smaller scale buildings right here. Same with this, we took 2 big buildings out of here and one townhouse building. These smaller buildings will be out here on the front, these townhouses. That's our clubhouse right there. We tried to enliven the mounding so that it would go in and out a little bit and be more aesthetic with our planting. And change the shape to some extent of this pond so it looks more natural like this one. We've got 2 male kiosks like RJ said. One is a kiosk, one is a male that's within the clubhouse. You can see this larger parking area so that we have plenty of spaces for the male people when they come home from work to pick up their mail. So we tried to listen to everybody's comments. We've added detail in terms of the courtyard area with fire pits. shelter house and benches. And since this is still just a preliminary presentation, we expect we'll have further development for that.
And then, as far as the townhomes, those have attached garages?
These have attached garages, right?
Now they at the front or the rear?
Front,
It's only-
there were plans of it in your packet.
Yeah, there's an elevation right here, if you'd like to see that.
I think that was the only one question I had was somewhere in here it said for residential's having them come through the rear. Oh my God. Okay, I'm good for that.
So are there any benches, like, I see you have benches marked in the central, where the shelter house area is. Are there gonna be any benches in that long walkway area? Like, from where Reed Parkway goes up into the, yeah,
We don't have any, we don't have it shown on the drawing now, but it's not gonna be a big problem to have.
Yeah, we have sidewalk, and, right now we're at preliminary development plan, that's something we can certainly add. Maybe between now and getting to the trustees.
it's a pretty long walkway. I would
Yeah,
hope that there would be some places to stop and rest. And how big is the shelter house? I didn't see the size.
There's no particular size right now, but it would at least be 15 by 15, maybe 25 by 15, something that has a reasonable size and scale to it.
Okay. And have you considered, like, since you removed, I guess one question I have is, can a fire truck turn in, because I know you removed it used to go kind of in a loop.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern or question is, can a fire truck turn around? I know a lot of times that can add or
They don't have to
change.
turn around because they can go back out. This road, you come in this road like this goes back out, comes back out to 37.
Well, is that road gonna be finished? Because if it's not finished now,
It'll be finished because the fire department and our engineer is here and has talked to them about that.
yeah, it's all part of the project, so it'll have to be constructed to get occupancy.
okay,
Actually, we put this exit entryway here at the specific requirement of fire department.
okay. Alright, I think those are the only questions I had at this point.
So one of the first questions that I had was, a couple of them have an answer now, the shelter house, size of the shelter house. It would be good, what I will tell you is, we usually like to see that documented somewhere of how large it is. If you could do bigger than 15 by 15, because if you think about people then getting, sitting under there, there's only a couple tables that then you can get under there. So it'd be good to have it more like a 20 by 20 or 20 by 15.
You want to put a condition on the,
Yeah.
that's fine with us.
Yep, okay, great. I appreciate where you guys have brought the density. Previously the land is obviously there for it, and we previously, we had it at the desire for it was condos. So was 4 units per acre previously for condos. So I appreciate what you've done with the green space. When we talk about usable green space, and I appreciate all the green space that you have, one of the notes that I had was, I like what you did in the bottom area, how you made essentials location. When you get to the other spots though, they don't have anything like that. So they're more of a disadvantage in those areas. So my thought was, even if you were to keep the kind of the lanes that you have, the two parallel lines that you have up in that upper section, if you were to pull them kind of closer together and put the parking on the other sides, the outsides of the buildings, if you could make some park space down the center. Does that make sense? Kind of
Right
where the
here, you
parking
mean?
lots- Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you
Just to
what we
make it
thought about.
feel,
What we thought about was these homeowners right here. And I'm thinking, I don't know if they want a play yard there, recreation space there, or not. And so what we tried to do was to give them as much distance as possible and space as possible and mounting as possible to protect their land values. So that's why we didn't put anything closer to that property line than we did.
and I'm not saying get them closer, what I'm saying is move the parking, because what I can see is if you kind of point people to congregate between the buildings, then where the parking currently is,
Are you talking about this parking?
I am all the way down. If you were to separate that and have part of it along the front and part of it along the back.
You mean back here?
Mhm.
That's why I
Together.
don't put parking back there for the neighbors. They don't want the light and they don't want the noise. And so that's what we did
And
that way.
perhaps there's, I mean, we can add some sort of recreational green space, sort of like us on the southern portion up there.
Yeah,
That's-
just
we can-
something to make it feel, because
We can do
what
that.
it created
do
over on
that.
the south side was nice, because that's what we call usable green space. So it's not just about having everything green, and we very much appreciate how much green there is now, because it does keep that rural feel. But I'm just thinking to make it kind of feel like what you have down at the south.
Mhm.
To bring that that type of a nature.
We don't have a
And
problem going that
sunlight.
direction, but like I said, we were trying to give
Sure,
benefit of the doubt to the neighbors.
yeah,
Yeah, so we can certainly investigate adding some, what rearranging we need to do, maybe I don't know that answer right now, but something on the north side.
my thought was is if you put, like I was saying, if you put a row of parking to the back side of it, people don't hang out in the parking lot, you're telling them to congregate in between buildings. So it's not like you're going to get more noise, because what's happening now is they're going to be congregating, right, and using more of the space between the buildings and the ponds. So my thought was then if you move any kind of, any like picnic space where you go out and throw a ball, or you play with your dog, anything like that, basically, if you were to pull that between the buildings
Yeah.
and pull them closer, and that might help
We can take a look at that.
piece of that. And then, even, and honestly, this is where maybe even then it can share between that upper area and then the middle piece right there, where you brought down those down to, right, yeah, that lower section where I think we're looking at the same spot, aren't
This?
we? Over that set of buildings, yeah. Like if you were to do something shared in there from
The issue that we have right here, and we can do some things here with paths. We're trying to keep as much of the trees as we possibly can. And then this
Oh, I'm not
stream
talking
that
about
goes
that.
through here, there's a lot of grade change right there.
okay,
And
A lot of
so if
grade
we
change
change the
then.
grade too much, then we kill all the trees.
sure.
So
So it
I don't
could
have
honestly
a
be
problem
just
getting
like a
some
walking
pathways
path.
through there.
Yeah, some walking
Yeah,
paths
no
and things
problem.
like that. And like what we had just said about the benches, that was kind of on my list too, because again, it just kind of creates that usable green space, walking paths, right? That people feel like they can get out and do things on their free time versus they're in this nice setting now of more rural feel, but how do we use it then?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Understood.
We talked about the size of the shelter, the benches, so how many, that's sorry, one second. On the lower portion, that lower portion, so I know that is, a cold flush property right now, but talk to me about, so it's a 50-foot building setback right now. No, down south.
Okay,
So when now these are our residents, whatever gets developed down there, we just want to have some type of buffer. Is there any way to do some mounding there then, that when we then how, whatever's going to go onto there, I need to look and see if if that's the future school site. I feel like that's further west. But just providing something, and not nearly to the level of what you've done further over, but even if it's trees, there's some type of separation of buildings to provide screening for those residents that are gonna be in there.
We still have, we don't have that much to do anymore.
I'll answer the question. Mark Mann, Advanced Civil Design, 781 Science Boulevard, Gander, Ohio. There's drainage swales that run through there, so we couldn't manage because we blocked the storm paths that are running through there. It might be a possibility for trees, but then the problem with adding a tree is then you've got stormwater pipes running between the catch basins, so then the roots interfere with those, so it could impact the storm drainage system if we
Okay.
could do anything other than maintain that 50 feet of setback and then do the swales and grass in that area.
Okay,
We'll take a look at it.
yeah, I think any type of screening that you could give there that's not going to destroy drainage pipes, of course, because you do not want to get into that situation, but anything that we could do there to then give privacy to those residents then, once they move in, that they're not going to be feeling like whatever then comes in, since they are closer to that property line, that 50-foot setback. I would say carrying those benches down and having them be, if there's some benches like around the outside of the clubhouse and stuff too.
Sure, okay. Yeah, are you talking right here? The clubhouse is right here.
Yeah, so the clubhouse where, like in front of the clubhouse and where there's the parking lot right there that's in front of the clubhouse.
Okay.
If you were to provide some benches there, just coming out of the clubhouse.
What you want to see is some additional development at the clubhouse, both with landscaping and benching. Besides what we've shown earlier in the stuff.
This wasn't really a question, but it was more of a call out on your project schedule. And it's probably just because things have maybe been pushed out or something, but for final building and construction documents, you had winter 2023 through summer 2023, so you just want to switch that to summer 2024.
Okay, yeah.
On tab 12. And then also your summer 2023 for construction service, which is 2024.
Okay, got it. Thank you for pointing that out.
And I think that was it. Actually, hold on, I do remember. I think that's where, I think, one second. Alright. Oh, I need to answer that, okay. The decorative stone that you called out between the buildings, is that just crushed stone, basically? We talked, in the landscaping, it showed decorative stone in between buildings, I think instead of mulch, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Is that just similar to like the crushed stone
Correct.
type of look? Okay. All right. I would love for it to be something different, but it's a maintenance nightmare then, having that much, so I get it. I think that's it for me.
So yeah, you made a lot of substantial changes. Thank you for hearing us. We do appreciate that. Still want to quibble a little bit about acreage.
Okay.
So your application says 49.898 gross acres. I did pull the survey. It's 49.633. You're much closer than you were last time. I appreciate that.
Okay.
But we're zoning, so acreage matters. And
Yeah.
I just want somewhere for that to be noted.
Okay.
I do appreciate the changes you've made. I will also say, though, that our zoning map does show this as having been part of the bio, which you are not required to pull down. However, you have requested PRD. And PRD does not support multifamily. It's called out expressly that it is, if it is not approved, it cannot be approved. Does that make sense? I mean, it's in our Article 11.
The first,
As well, PRD is intended to then support an overlay of either FR1, R2, R3, or R4, or TPUD, none of which of those we requested. So that is sort of outside of what I believe, could approve.
the existing, are you referring to what the current underlying zoning is and how the PRD would be an overlay to the existing FR1, which is what we have, that's correct.
We're not requesting FR1, though it is FR1.
Correct.
We're
And we're,
requesting PRD,
that's right.
which is expressly called out as single-family homes.
The first page of the PRD references single-family or multifamily development.
If it's TPUD.
Okay, and I thought we also discussed as it relates to the TPUD, that TPUD only allows for partial.
Okay. I agree that TPUD would not be appropriate, but it is the only zoning, aside from the R4, or I think it's the R8, that does support multifamily units within Berlin Township zoning.
Okay,
So, I mean, as a PRD, and I can kind of call out some of the details on that. Article 11, PRD will be overlaid with FR1, R2, R3, R4, or TPUD. We're not requesting that. Section 11.04, permitted uses. Single-family detached residential dwellings.
and unless there's anything additional you'd like to add, at our pre-application meeting, I know that we said before what the recommendation was. We complied with that recommendation, which is why we're here before you.
Let me call out then, section 11.02. No statement by officials of the township or county made prior to formal submission of a development plan and application to the zoning commission shall be binding.
Okay,
And this is the third meeting, we've had this same conversation. Regional planning said PRD is not appropriate. At our last meeting, we said PRD is not appropriate. I will stand by, PRD is not appropriate. I like this plan, I would live in this plan, but not there.
how do you mean not there, meaning the application needs to be stated as not in, I mean, not to go back to our pre-application meeting and stuff.
Right,
where
right.
I mean, the pre-application meeting is a hearing as part of the process as well.
It's not a hearing, I will say it's not a hearing.
But it's part of our application, and I
I
understand.
hear you, but
So we can request that, I mean, I completely understand, and we've spoken with the zoning staff as well as county solicitor and so forth, and that's why we proceeded this way. If from a technical standpoint, you believe it to be different, we accept that. And if that is something that you would like to vote on as a condition of going through this process, that is something that we would like to accept.
what would we do in place of this though? Since this, it doesn't fit with our zoning.
How do you mean
Ask
it
for a
doesn't?
variance.
Yeah, a variance.
So, and I can't speak for the trustees and I can only speak for myself. But if we gave a variance for that, we would have opened a dam that will never close. I mean, PRD has a meaning and it's single family home. If we give a variance for that, it no longer means that.
Again, PRD, if it means single-family homes and multifamily, like it says in the code, unless it's TPUD,
Right.
then you can, I think, I'm just speaking out loud,
Sure.
read in, and we can amend the application as you are requesting between now and our trustee hearing. You may state that as so long as the application is amended to state that it is PRD with a rezoning request to a TPUD overlay. Does that make sense?
Well, you know, these are big conversations. It's not a quick conversation. Because as you pointed out, TUPD does not really align with what you're trying to accomplish.
And I think the only item from TPUD that is different from PRD is that it only allows up to 75% of rental housing.
Right.
So perhaps that would be another variance that we would have to request as it relates to if you would like to read in the TPUD amendments as a condition. And that's something that we can accept as well. The reason that we proceeded with PRD, again, is because of our pre-application meeting discussion. And the TPUD, we wanted to eliminate as many variances, so we didn't want to have to ask for the TPUD variance.
Yeah.
But
I know, I
it's
see
a-
what you're saying. I just try and, we're trying to take a square peg and put it in a round hole. And I think that's a really big conversation. I sort of wish we hadn't gotten this far in this format because I don't
Yeah.
know how to fix it.
The same issue exists with the overlay as well, frankly, as you're aware.
You're right.
So, I mean, we think this is a great plan. We listened to your concerns.
Right,
We addressed your concerns.
right.
I guess we're now at a technicality, I mean, of.
It's a
do you
big
want-
technicality.
I completely
It's a big
understand.
technicality.
And I mean, I think we have a potential solution, it sounds like, with reading in some of those conditions. So,
Right. And I do not know enough about the TPUD and the requirement for the percentage of ownership. I don't know if that's the state law. I don't know if a variance for that would even be appropriate. I don't have an answer is what I'm saying. That's kind of outside my wheelhouse.
do we have the solicitor here perhaps that is able to speak on that or interpret the zoning code with the zoning inspector maybe? I'm not sure. But I mean, I think it's, I mean,
I'm with you. I would love to find a solution. I really would. I'm just not sure what it is.
and we'd be willing to accept what you state as, for instance, it was conditional on this changing to TPUD and pending solicitor review of the efficacy of our conditions. I mean, it sounds like I'm just speaking out loud here.
Yeah, I hear you. We're just kind of freewheeling. Any of you ever heard of a variance for TPUD?
I would say we have to talk with someone at the county regarding that, honestly. I don't know that we can just say that we can approve something based off of that if that doesn't fit, because, so then you would ask for a variance. So you're saying that for that 25% to make it 100% rental, you would ask for that variance. But I don't know that we can. I think that has to be a discussion with the county
Yeah, and it's my understanding,
before we can even say that that would be possible to, like, we wouldn't be able to vote on that. It feels that we would need to go back to the county to ask those questions of, is that even something that we could allow from a variance perspective?
I think, I've been to a few of these, Mr. Mann has, Mr. Woodings has, and a variance is a variance is a variance.
But it's a completely different zoning code.
So I was gonna say, then it goes back to, does your proposed plans meet the TPUD
And
requirements?
the entire, so the TPUD, again, the TPUD and the PRD are precisely exactly the same, except for that 75% maximum rental allowance. So, I mean, that would be another variance that you read in. Speaking out loud,
Right?
the conditional upon amending our application to be a PRD with a TPUD overlay and requesting a variance for the maximum allowable rental units to be 100%. Sounds like it solves the,
Well, let me ask this. If that variance were denied, where does that leave you?
the variance were denied as you, I'm sorry, who would deny the variance? The trustees?
Anybody?
It goes to-
I'm just
yeah.
asking.
So, I mean, it's my understanding that we go to the trustees after
Correct.
this.
Correct.
So the trustees would vote on the application along with all the variances. So, I mean, in theory, we have from a vote this evening to when the minutes are approved, to when we get to the trustee level, for those variances to be confirmed and solidified from a zoning perspective before the trustees would see them.
Right. I mean, my recommendation, I'm speaking only for me, is that I would start over. And I know you have time constraints and contracts and I get it.
Yeah.
But I can't vote for this. And, I don't believe I'm authorized to grant that kind of a variance. Like I said, I think the structure for TPUD is bigger than we are. And I could be wrong, because we don't do a lot of TPUD.
Yeah. I'll say that we can't start over.
I get it.
But again, the TPUD and the PRD are exactly the same, except for that one variance that we have to request. I think we know the path that, I'm looking for, perhaps, that seems to be the solution to the dilemma. And we'd ask for you to vote in that manner.
I mean, can you make a verbal amendment to, so are you still sticking, are you moving to amend it then?
If that's what I'm sorry, I'm not doing anything. I'm just presenting, right? It's you that would recommend to us what you would like us to do in front of the trustees, and then the trustees issues the final vote, correct? So it would be your recommendation.
I just don't see how you could verbally, make an amendment that would be that large without doing it in writing.
I do not either, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the minutes are taken, I mean, that's what,
Right. Well,
much like between the Valentine's Day hearing and this hearing,
Right,
we
well,
submitted a whole other
Submitting a
application.
new application, yeah, I just don't.
Yeah.
But that's different than procedure. We're talking about procedure that, going back and amending, which you did an amazing job and no one's arguing that, but we're talking about procedure and what the code is and whether we even have the ability to do
Completely
what,
understand.
again, we understand where you're coming from, what you want us to do, but if we don't have the ability to do what you want us to do, then you're not gonna go anywhere with the trustees either, it's just gonna be pushed back.
Yeah, and again, if you are comfortable making that recommendation, although knowing that, we don't have, I don't know if we have a solicitor here, I don't know, who can maybe interpret that for us or say that that makes sense and that's a variance that's like any other variance, which we believe it to be. And again, I'll say between our last apartment hearing and now, we amended our application. So we can do the same thing between now in your recommendation and when we go to the trustees. So that's kind of the way we want to proceed.
does that sound like something you've heard of before? That they can amend their,
I'm not sure if from the zoning code perspective, what it says in the zoning code is kind of just the way that it goes, but also on the side point of what the code is interpreted as would also be coming to what is also said in the ORC as well. So when it comes down to a legal standpoint, I would not be able to say.
Darcy, can I speak?
yes, please.
So, in the last township that I was working at, we did allow variances, but it didn't have to go to the people for vote, not just the township. The whole town has to go to change from the variance, you just don't allow it.
Right.
That's the only way we allow it.
That's always allowed, but, that's always,
That's why I voted everybody, ballot and everything, in the official ballot,
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but
it's the only way to do it.
We've permitted variances and that has not been the case.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is,
Good stuff, but we were controlling.
not regarding variety of variance.
Is it possible to take a couple minutes, recess and speak with our attorney that's here too. If there's any, is that possible?
I don't know, how do you feel about that?
I can talk with one member.
I'm sorry?
I'll talk with one member.
Yeah, that makes sense, okay, that makes sense. May we have a recess?
Sounds good.
Okay,
All right, 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
okay, and can we just,
Don't have a gavel.
yeah. You should know how to- Yeah. I think that should be best.
Okay, let's reconvene, please. All right, so all of us have asked our questions essentially. So what I would like to do next is move out to public comment.
Okay.
And, assuming some of you here have some questions or comments.
Yeah. First of all, when,
One second, name and address.
oh, sorry, I forgot. Ann Marchiondo, 444 Lackey Old Site Road. When we were considering purchasing our lot out here, and we live right next to where they like to build this, I looked on the website in the township and they said that there would be a step down from where our homes were and that they would be single-family homes. Then, as we were building, we heard about the wanting to change the overlay. So we attended meetings for a year to a year and a half. And in that time, the county, the township, and the residents agreed on R4 for that area next to ours. And to me, that seems appropriate. That's a step down. The closest apartments that are near our house right now, I think, are Summit View, the ones across from Meyer. And they're across from Meyer next to an auto sales lot and an empty lot. And to me, that seems an appropriate place to put an apartment building. To me, next to very expensive homes and established homes, this doesn't seem like the correct thing to me. It seems like R4 was appropriate. And I'm kind of wondering how we jumped from that, where everybody had agreed on what should go there, to this. Can you explain how that happened and why we can't just have someone, why the developer can't do R4 there instead of growing it so large and having problems with traffic near our homes and just not having any step down at all? I've never seen our homes are stone, stucco, wood siding, and some of them are 5,000 square feet, and then we have apartments. It just doesn't seem appropriate for this area. And I'm wondering why he can't just put his apartments in one of the other areas that's already been zoned for something that size or that many people.
So I permits landowners to apply for, basically, they could ask for anything they like. So that's the role of this board as well as our trustees to determine whether that's gonna get approved. So it's a process.
Well, on the website, then why do we have on the website right now, it says that R4 should be going there?
And that's the overlay map. Developers are not required to use the map or the overlay that we have. As long as anything complies within our zoning, they can ask for it.
Okay, so, and as far as you say this is the first one that's being considered, is that correct?
Yeah, they have a business park also that they've applied for.
Okay, but the first
Kind of
apartment.
a combination,
Yeah.
first apartment, yes.
So don't you think this would be a bad precedent to set with single-family homes next to this many apartments rather than having some kind of step down in the area?
I don't know if I can speak to precedent. You know, like I said, it's our job to look at the zoning, and determine whether it complies.
Okay.
And we're pretty, so
Okay.
cut and dry. Any comments elsewhere?
I do have a question. The 500 recess y'all took,
A little longer, sorry.
that's okay. The original 160 Lackey Old State, was there a decision made whether you guys can or have the authority to rule on the TPRD or the RPD or PRD?
I think I want to discuss that with the board after the public comment, if that's okay. Makes sense to you?
Well,
I mean, so just to sort of outline the thought process, is that we do have before us an application from TNR Properties, and they have reviewed many of our recommendations. They've made a lot of changes. However, we have an application before us, and that's the application we have to consider. That makes sense. So modifications, variations can be part of an application, but to change the entire application.
midstream. Oh, okay, thank you. Next question I have is the height of those dwellings. How high are those?
Ridge line is at 35 feet.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Frank Reinhardt. I live at 3645 Berlin Station Road, a 25-year resident of the county and a lifelong resident of Delaware County. I'm a local banker that has financed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of commercial real estate transactions throughout central Ohio. I understand economic development projects, and I serve on the Delaware County Finance Authority's Board of Directors. The Berlin Business Park is finally ready to get going and moving forward. And in my opinion, this would be a good project to actually get it started. This project would provide much needed housing, as well as substantial property tax revenue that Berlin Township could use for public improvements. As a homeowner and resident of Berlin Township, I'm personally in favor of this project.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Marchiando, 444 Lacking State Road. That property is going to get developed, whether these guys do it or not. We're going to have tax revenue. I think we should do something appropriate. To me, it's not an economic decision. Whether they build R6, R4, somebody, they're going to pay taxes. So I just don't see it as being an economic decision at all. And I got to live with it. I live there. I'm married to this woman. So the only thing I can add to that is I would urge you to vote no on the application today.
As it relates to tax revenue and density, I mean, for the township in its best interest, I mean, obviously use and taking into account the kind of wishes of the residents and so forth is important, and much so as well as taxes and management of taxes and the expenditure and good public improvements. Density does have a correlation on that. Another thing that has a correlation on that is what is commercially versus residentially taxed. And what we're proposing here is commercially taxed and therefore bringing much more substantial tax revenue to the township.
Somebody, I'm sorry, in the back, go ahead.
Joe Mitchell, 3491 Maryland Way. To add to the point, I'm a 15-year resident here, multiple kids in the school system. We don't have any amenities or infrastructure in Berlin Township. We don't have a pool, we don't have a rec center, we have no library, we have no playground, we have no bike path, we have no ballparks. Correct me if I'm wrong. This tax base will provide the ability to provide those things for every resident in the township. Second point, this project represents a reshoring opportunity in the United States. This is a once in a lifetime generational thing. We're bringing back industry to the United States. You have Intel, you have Amazon, you have the Honda battery. All this supports that, supports the growth, it supports your neighbors. Berlin Township is surrounded by rental projects. There's rental projects in Liberty, there's rental projects in Genoa, there's rental projects in Orange. There's rental projects that are right on the edge of Berlin Township. That's Shanahan 23. There's Ben's Farm, which is surrounded by expensive single-family homes. There's bookended rental projects at the end of Southwood State and Blair's. This makes sense in terms of the demographics and geographic location. Before we've heard about this wanting to be a condo project, there's multiple stalled condo projects right now in Berlin that have been sitting for a year. You have the Romanelli Hughes project on Southwood State in Hollenbach, 3 Pillars Home at Hollenbach in northwest Southwood State, just sitting there because the market right now doesn't support $500,000 patio homes. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarification question? Where's your data coming from that it's saying that those are stalled projects? Sorry.
Just my own observation.
Okay, so you don't actually have hardcore data on that?
No, I don't, but I've seen them, I've observed them over the last year. So they've been in progress for over a year, and there hasn't been any progress made. So there hasn't been any sales made for those patio homes to build. Whereas if you look at the corner of North Road and Lewis Center, which is a rental project, it went up, in 60 days.
So you have no hardcore facts though that those are not in progress, that those custom home sites are not in progress?
Other than the observation of not seeing any progress for over a year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I know, 452, like you would say, to, I don't, work in transportation and we did civil engineering, so that's my area. So I'm teaching you how it works. One of the things I'm looking is with this project and hopefully be successful, how we could tap in the existing home and some of the amenities that we are developing in this project. If that's something that actually we develop, because I'll give you a good example. Like we all have a septic tank, but if you are close and you want to tap into the sewer line, how do you want to do that? I think that that's something that we should give some benefit also to people that they are already have home. And I think that's something that I try to get the information that I can anyway. I said, maybe I should come here and explain because that's what I'm looking for.
So that's usually available, once sewer line's available, adjoining neighbors can typically tap in depending on availability, but that goes through the Delaware County Sewer. We do not have any purview at all over that in this commission. But yeah, if you want to call the office, I think we can give you some phone numbers and direct you.
I talked to them there again, when you talk to their engineers and, they say, oh, we have to do a study and this thing and that thing. We are used to that. I know how to say something, It's a good thing is to just say, oh, we study with, long-term planning and all this kind of stuff. That means it's lost.
Well, it's not there yet, so that complicates things, but once it's there, I think that option is a possibility. No guarantees, I think. Okay, any other comments? Yes, sir.
Keith Gosha, 1391 Lockwood Court. I have questions about the topo of the land here and the water retention you have there and runoff from storms. You have a lot of hard surfaces now that you didn't have before with rooftops, pavement. How is that going to be handled? Do you have a flow rate yet of 100-year storms?
Mr. Mann?
Mark Mann, Civil Design. So the stormwater management for the site is based upon a much larger area than you're looking at. So the ponds that we're providing, both for the upper wet one, the lower wet one, and the one on the lower one are used for the detention and retention of the stormwater runoff. So what's happening is one of the big issues that we ran into with the site was that there's a total of 420 acres of off-site flow that comes through that stream. So we had to somehow maintain the ability for that to get there while retaining our stormwater. What we're required to do is that we're required to not release stormwater from our system any quicker than the pre-developed 1-year storm. So what that means is that.
No, I understand. I'm an engineer, so.
Okay, so it's designed appropriately. The ponds are designed appropriately to retain up to the 100-year, and then if you get more than 100-year storm event, then they'll flood through the ponds. They don't flood directly into the stream. So really, what we're doing is we're holding back water that would have gone to the pond, would have gone to the stream and under the culvert and into the reservoir. We're holding that back while other water goes through, and then we slowly release our water.
Right, I just see a lot of these ponds are at 90% capacity also.
Well, there'll be 4 feet of freeboard minimum on the ponds. There'll be minimum 7 foot deep. So they're maintainable. There'll be a credit life from them. There'll be fountains in them. There'll be an amenity on top of being able to store retention system as well.
The other question about the exit to the north up on the 37. I don't know if we can, Darcy or Kathy, we can hold that we won't issue a CO until that exit is fully functional. So no one can live in those areas until that exit is fully paved and functional. I would hold COs for those, if you approve it.
I think that is a function of the county engineers, I don't believe.
Township can do it.
Can we?
I've done it before with sewer, where they had to put honey trucks out there, and they didn't have a way to do it.
I mean, I would imagine fire would not like people living here until that
No, and I don't wanna see a
alternative
temporary,
exit.
I don't wanna see a temporary gravel road out to
Oh, I
36,
see.
37.
You
It
want
needs to
it
be
full.
paved and functional. Need to see how it goes in.
Decent observation.
Oh, I saw the traffic study, it was done really nice, I like it. It's good.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
But I will tell you that we modified the traffic study, or at least in the process, because this traffic study that you saw was based on the original unit count. So now with the considerably reduced number of units that are in, there's a lot less traffic.
Sure. Oh, my other question, I guess, was construction and construction debris. Are you gonna fence the entire perimeter of that section so no, debris flows into the neighbors? You know, temporary fencing so that things are held back, so they're not getting trash in there.
When we get to the construction documents, as part of that will be sediment and erosion control. So that'll be, one of the first things we do will be to dig the pond, put skimmers on there so that any runoff goes into the pond and is mitigated. And usually we'll put silt fencing around the entire perimeter of the site to stop any runoff going into any neighboring facilities.
Okay, and how are you gonna control the amount of material coming in and out? Where's the construction site gonna be?
That's down the road a little bit, not sure what that is. Entrances are probably, the entrance, construction entrance will hopefully be off 36, 37. To try to avoid construction vehicles coming the other way. But it really does depend on the staging of the project and where this, and how that will actually happen. And that's a detail that we'll get into and have to work with the contractors with.
So I would ask too that they repave the exit at 36, 37 after the construction's done, because they will tear that road up. After all that material is moving over, it will have to be resurfaced.
That's actually typically what we do, where we understand that the fact that heavy construction vehicles will potentially damage the surface course. And there'll be a mill and overlay that would be happening there as a minimum.
All right, other comments?
Jasper to Christopher. 436.
436, I think.
Okay, 436 Lackville State Road. That's kind of my phone number, I forgot. I guess a couple issues or things I want to mention. I do appreciate all the work that went into the updated plan. You can tell they went and sharpened their pencils, so to speak, as far as making some changes and improving on what they've done. I think from a density perspective, when you look at Delaware County Regional Planning Commission, they reviewed the initial plan. They had issues with the density, and they recommended the density stick to, yes, it's not going to the VIO is what they're trying to do, but they recommended sticking to the 4 density that was within the VIO. They also recommended the TPUD, which is a 20% maximum rental, according to our zoning. So a variance to 100 would be a pretty big variance within that, which I have some concerns around. And then, I know we've had some folks mention, the need for economic development. I don't think any of the residents are arguing that that need is there, that tax revenue from the BIO and BCO is needed, or those areas, whether we're not really talking about BIO tonight, but those BIO and BCO areas, that was the concept behind it, was to bring in that tax revenue. So I think, as one of the other folks mentioned, that economic development will be coming. What we'd like to see is kind of adhering to the concept of the BIO and those densities. Delaware Regional Planning, they see the economic development coming. The tax money is coming. So trying to get to that density number and more of a TPUD where, it's a little bit lower number, much lower number on the rental side of things, I think is what I would recommend. And then just kind of the precedents about, they talked about rezoning, and yes, it's not using the VIO, but if the rezoning and the variances, if it gets to the point of pushing outside of that boundary of what the land use plan was for the R4 or the VIO and VCO, you're gonna start to see that same request come through for all the other R4 buffers for all the other residents. People are gonna want, developers are gonna see that they can change the first one, they're gonna wanna change the other ones. They're gonna want something outside of the land use plan. You know, the industrial, the commercial properties are there. There's also R10, which is multifamily design within both VIO and VCO, so that land is there. You know, and I would just ask that we try to stick to the concept of not only the VIO, but also try to follow along with Delaware County Regional Planning of what they just looked at from a standpoint of recommending on density and even the TPUD. That's all. Thank you.
The commercial and the industrial is not there, and there is no tax base besides certified agricultural use. There is no development there now, and there won't be any, unfortunately, because this is the gateway, right? This is where everything begins. This opens up the rest of the Berlin Industrial Park. The utilities are constructed here for a variety of reasons. They were located here to place the lift station, to place the water tower. It's great that there is R10. It's great that there is industrial overlay zone, but that will never happen if this doesn't happen. All the utilities are right here. Thank you.
Is there any further comment from our public? Yes, sir.
Eric Rickenball, 244 Old State Road, like the Old State Road. I just want to reinforce what was said in the front row. The people that are here and some that aren't here that live on the border of this property, I think are the people whose voices are most important because we're the ones affected. If somebody lives down the road or somewhere else, I'm really not concerned about their thoughts on this. You know, we need the tax base. We know it's going to happen. We all went to zoning meetings for a year and a half. We fought and fought and fought and to get it at least to an R4. And to see it be more than an R4 just gives us all the message that that time was a waste of time. Not to mention, it increases the traffic and the burden on our schools that Berlin Township does not need. So I'd appreciate it if you would reject anything more than R4.
Thank you. Any other comments in our audience? No? Okay. So I did allude to conversation with our representative of the prosecuting attorney's office that the application that has been submitted is what we need to vote on. That variances and modifications typically deal with much smaller items, exteriors, amenities, things like that. So we do need to vote on the application as it was presented. And I'm assuming you want to move forward with the vote.
Is this an open conversation that I may have?
Yes, sir.
So, and thank you for taking the time to hear what you heard as it relates to variances and so forth. And I'll say again, what we just went through to get to the point where we are this evening is we amended our application, we resubmitted an application, we resubmitted an entire set of plans to get to this point. And if that's the case of what we have to do again, then we'll do it again in front of the trustees. We've asked for variances of this magnitude and greater and achieved them in many different municipalities and townships. And we're legally comfortable, and if we need to get additional legal opinion, we will. And we respectfully ask for your vote this evening. And we would also ask that you do add into the record the variances that we are requesting with your vote.
So are you including these variances that you sent in your letter?
The variances that we set with our letter, correct.
But with those, it still has that it's a PRD instead of a TP, so that's still the wrong.
Well, I mean,
So I just wanna make sure
if we
that
could
we're.
go back in time and this application had been for a TPUD, I think this body would have considered the whole project from a different point of view. So we really are unable to rewind that reel, I guess.
And a PRD, TPUD, a PRD is a PRD is a PRD. A PRD that is FR1 that's the underlying zoning. We're changing the zoning no matter what, right? So this is an amendment to change the zoning, to change the land use category. We're amending our application. If we need to amend our application at your recommendation, if that's your recommendation to have a PRD, TPUD, we'll take that recommendation to the trustees. And if that is your recommendation, then we add the variance as it relates to the rental housing as well.
You understand that by doing that, we looked it up and it's actually only 20%
Okay.
can be rented into, so you'd be asking for an 80% variance. As
Asking
opposed-
total 100% rental units, that's
So,
correct.
yeah, so for instead of being 20%, they would be 100%, but then also a TPUD, and sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice, has a 4 acre per unit.
4 units
Per unit per
per
acre,
acre.
yes.
A density variance,
A
we need a
density.
density variance
That's right.
and a rental, so
We
two
would-
major variances.
We would need
Right off the bat.
We would need all of the variances in my letter, and in addition to the variance that you just said as relates to the rental units, it's up to 100%, that's correct, and that's what we'd be asking for.
Can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Chuck Ronnie, I live at 330 Lackman Old State Road. I've come to meetings, I've listened to you talk, and it seemed like you had no respect for what the average person has to say. You have a definite way of saying what you want to say, and you just bulldoze over it in a calm way. But you're not fooling anybody by doing that. You're a young man, you gotta learn. You gotta learn to respect all the people, not just your boss. So when you say that you looked it over, you knew when you started this project, you knew what you
Madam
wanted.
Chairperson,
So you very
Can I
well.
remind you, comments need to be directed through the chairperson?
And you are correct, thank you. So I'm sorry if you have to direct your comments to me, please.
It's public comment, so that's okay.
Well, I haven't.
Okay, understand, you can continue, go ahead, sorry.
I'm not sure, you're telling me I kind of stop talking.
No, you need to direct the comments in.
Okay. It seems to me, if I had the company that he's got, I would have the respect for all the people, particularly the ones that live there. And I made a little survey and talked to them about it. And then I would have sat down with you people and found out, if I didn't know and understand what was written down, I'd understand what I need to do. But no, the way they operated is, they had a clever way of bringing the thing in. They had a meeting in a house, an old house on, my wife and I went to it, she about fell because they didn't have proper lighting on, so you couldn't get in there. And so we went through that, and it seems to me that it's all about they're getting what they want. And they're just ignored anything we said, all those other meetings, they never took the time to find out what we thought. Never bothered to ask. I live right on the corner of the building. I said, I know the water problem we have. And so I bring that up and he'll cleverly just bulldoze right over it in a real calm way. And that's not right. I'll be 85 years old in about 4 more months. I've lived life long enough to know I've been to meetings, many meetings years past, fighting the same type of thing we're fighting here. And I'm really amazed at the arrogance they have. So that's enough.
I'm sorry that anyone, feels that way. I don't think that you speak for anyone or for everyone rather. We met with you folks, on site, for a meeting where we listened to your concerns. We had a pre-application meeting, which is why sort of we're in kind of where we are as relates to the TPD. And we had our meeting on Valentine's Day. We heard your concerns and we made substantial changes and we're happy with those changes. We we think you are as well. I'm sorry, so go ahead if,
Okay, so we do have to vote on the application as it was submitted. And consider the variances that you requested with that application. So,
and I've done, this is what's been done historically in other townships and municipalities. If I may speak into the record, additional variances that are as part of this application as submitted, is that something that would be allowed?
Oh, it would actually be written down and signed.
Okay, well, can I or should I speak them aloud, or should I recess for a few minutes and write them and submit? And
it's my understanding, we have waited till we voted and then we put it on our, no?
Yeah, it has to be on
Oh,
for us to be able to vote for it.
So I mean, oftentimes I hear after we have this dialogue like this, like for instance, the green space or the benches here, a condition of approval is adding those benches. And you read that into the record and that serves as the vote in the application. So and if that's the same to you, I think that's the same to me.
No, we typically do write it on the plat. Kathy, would you read that now?
Well, if this is going to be.
We can use that as an exhibit. We can use that as an exhibit and then write the additional requests on just is it the original map that she has?
I believe so, but I don't know if I can go
Did she
check
take
and
it?
see that.
Is she gone? Yeah.
That way then everything will be signed.
Okay, sounds good.
I need to clean a copy of that. I have it written all over mine.
I've written all over mine.
Wednesday.
Do you have a
Do you have a copy that
He's
you
a
written
man.
on? Okay.
Did you boot me?
Okay, so he is looking for the map. If you do want to take a recess,
Do you wanna
enter
your
a
copy?
copy of your letter in this, called Exhibit A.
Okay.
So you make your request as Exhibit A and then the things in addition that you want to add.
Which would be at your request, the purity, TBD,
Well, it's at your request,
Okay.
it's not at our request.
maybe your suggestion, as will be in the minutes.
That's not what you said. Yep.
I don't have very good handwriting, so I mean, everybody
Oh,
works
yeah,
fast.
Tara's
I'll do it.
She said he doesn't need to handwrite that.
Yeah, that's her.
So am I to write on this letter, the variance request? I'll bring that back this letter.
We have it on the front side, we
Clean
have,
This is the
yeah.
copy.
That would be Exhibit A, and then I think we would write the additional requests.
Okay. I'm not left-handed.
Me too.
Wait, so, yeah, that one standalone will be Exhibit A.
Okay.
If you write your.
I will write on this.
So anyway, we will take a 5-minute recess for this to you right now, so back in 5 minutes, if you're anytime.
Darcy.
Just make sure that he's writing down.
Yeah.
Hey, Darcy.
Maybe
Help me to
if
bring
he writes down one, just go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just make sure it's written exactly as you want. It's just, if anything's incorrect, then, you know, we have
think we're gonna reconvene, please. And we do have, are you ready, Lisa? I'm sorry. Make sure everybody's on board. So we do have before us BCC 23-003, Bob Haddon, Chapman, David, John Reed, and William Grade, 609 Champion Creek Boulevard, Ohio, 44256. Requesting rezones of the two parcels, I will not read. Plus or minus, our application says 49.898. If we determined that's a little off, but stick with it. From FR1, the application did say to plan residential PRD for residential multifamily development, State Route 37, East Delaware, Ohio 43021. But in addition to that application, we do have variances, which we have written. RJ did go through these, they were sent us in the form of a letter, and we're using that as Exhibit A. It includes, and I'm not gonna read the letter, but number one is the density divergence.
Setbacks eliminated,
The setbacks are eliminated,
parking
divergences,
and 1 bedroom size.
and the bedroom size decreased from the minimum requirement of 800 feet. And in addition to what we have written on our plat, amendment to the application to be our PRD with TPUD overlay, variance request to 13.06. K, what's the K? Is that, oh, it's item K. To allow 100% multifamily units to be designated as rental units. And these amendments, variances are in addition to pages 1 and 2 of Exhibit A, which I just read. So I guess I will make that motion that we consider that application as I just read. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, Ms. Kevin,
No.
Ms. Slows,
No.
Ms. Brown? No. Ms. Shields?
No. As you know, RJ, this does go now to our trustees to give consideration, okay? We really do appreciate that you listened to us and that you made some substantial changes. I get it. Our role here is to make sure it complies. And I think you understand our point of view. We're not trying to be adversarial. But this will then
So
go to our trustees.
thank you, and we amended the application at the suggestion of you to include your variances.
Right.
And you voted for recommendation of denial still.
Well, I think, as I said, and I can only speak for myself, had we had this application as a TPUD additionally, our entire process would have looked a little different. And our conversation would have been a little different. In addition, I understand that the TPUD is not that your needs because it's only 20% rental. However, I personally have a great deal of discomfort requesting that variance. I just do. So, and when you say it was at our request, I have to stop you there. It's not our request, it's a discussion. And like I said, we're trying to get a round peg into a square hole. And at some point, that becomes impossible is all I'd say.
Okay, I understand, and just for the minutes to state that it is the applicant's interpretation that the variances and the amendment that we made and variances that we requested were at the suggestion of the board. And you can write down the minutes and you can disagree if you'd like.
Sure.
And that is just something that I would like to have the minutes reflect before we move on to the trustees.
And I would take a little disagreement with that,
Okay.
frankly, which is okay. It's
Okay,
okay for us to not be 100% agreement.
Can I comment on that?
Certainly.
The reason why we had you do that specifically, why we just went through that exercise is because that is a required exercise before we can vote. So since you wanted to have a vote and we needed to have those things in there, in order for us to vote, we can't vote without it written down. It's procedure, you can't do it. So that's the procedure. So to have that be reflected in the minutes as well, we have to follow procedure.
Okay.
And
So I know the vote's over. Is there any additional feedback or changes that the board is recommended we make before we go on to the trustees besides the variances that were requested in the application that you just voted for tonight?
I'm gonna go back to square peg round hole. I think there's discomfort with the density, there's discomfort with it adjoining established residences. There's discomfort with it not using the bio, which is completely, you're right, okay, I understand that. I think if you had presented to us an application that complied with the bio, we'd be having a different conversation. As some of our residents did mention, we did have a 1.5 year long process that was heavily attended by residents. And everybody worked hard to hammer out what they thought was a great compromise. And this is outside of that. So.
Completely understand, and also for the record to state that you acknowledge that the BIO includes errors and flaws and understand why we made the decision for the TPD PRD.
I would not agree with errors and flaws. We like our bio.
But it does have errors that we acknowledge in previous hearing, just
And
to
I'll
allow
say that's
the.
your opinion, and you're entitled to it.
Okay, and just for the record to state. Okay, well, thank you. Can I
Can I
ask?
also comment? You could also follow the recommendations of the Delaware Regional Planning Commission and go to, they had actually recommended, going to this, the PRD with the TPUD overlay and going down to a density of 4. And then also going to the 800 square foot, 1 bedroom. If you would have followed their recommendations, we wouldn't have had to go here.
Okay.
So this is consistent really with what their recommendations were.
Okay, is there a follow-up to when we can move on to the trustees, or what's the next step for that? And also as it relates to the industrial portion as well, if that is an answer, I don't know.
So Kathy's the person with the answers on that, so I'd suggest calling her, but my understanding is that we next meet on the 11th, and at that point, we will have reviewed the minutes from this evening, and this will be signed at our next meeting. And then Kathy passes them on to the trustees. I believe there's a 30-day window on that. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I believe so, and it'd be then in Claudia's hands, which I believe that you spoke with Claudia as well on that before it goes to the trustees.
Okay.
Kind of the same process as the industrial as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, before you stampede out of here, do we have any other business to bring before the zoning commission?
No further business.
Our meeting next week has been canceled. We had this meeting tonight in lieu of that, and we will meet next on April 11th. As of right now, I don't think there's anything on the agenda. However, we really will probably need to have a very brief gathering to sign minutes if nothing comes from the agenda. April.
Serious? I thought she had something on, though, on the 11th.
I think she said there might be a little, but that has not been solidified.
Okay.
I'll be gone again. I'll be back in New York.
Okay.
No, you're
Yeah. All right, any objections to adjournment? Meeting adjourned, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are rays of sunshine and clouds there, thank you.
Well, we don't have,
Yes.
from a.
Because I said that, and I went and looked, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a button.
Doing, well,
I got a key for everybody. Yes. But everybody was like, that.
the way I read that.
So I understand, but.
It is, and you do, I went out there and I saw it, I said.
So now, yeah, well, and this is where